In this video, I would like to compare the Tesla transformer that many hobbyists build to a bell. What are the similarities between the bell and the Tesla transformer? They are very different on the first sighting, but in actuality, they're very similar. There's a clapper in the bell that hits it and the bell rings. In the Tesla transformer, we have a similar story. See, in those two competing classic Tesla coil circuits, there is a primary primary coil, primary transformer winding circuit, and it's like a clapper. It gives an impulse of electromagnetic energy to the secondary because high currents accumulate in the circuit and eventually break down the spark gap, and this causes high currents that excite the secondary winding of the Tesla transformer. The Tesla transformer secondary is essentially a resonator because it has capacitance and it has inductance. It has capacitance because there is capacitance between the windings of the coil and capacitance between the ground and the upper part of the coil, and it has its self-frequency. Bell and the Tesla transformer secondary are resonators. They resonate. So they oscillate harmonically, but their harmonic is a decaying harmonic because they're losses. And decaying harmonic is not a perfect harmonic because the frequency drifts as it decays, and the decay pattern itself follows an exponential decay. So if you look at the function, it has the e to the power of component and the cosine component and some other components that make the frequency decrease as it oscillates and the energy decreases. The harmonic tapers off. The energy decreases and the bell gets quieter and quieter, and the Tesla transformer gets quieter and quieter in terms of voltage and amplitude. So we want to hit the bell again with a clapper or strike our coil with new amount of energy that build up in the capacitor bank. But when we do this, we extinguish the existing oscillation. Unless you have superhuman capabilities, you will strike the bell with a clapper and extinguish the existing resonance of the bell and give it a new amount of energy to resonate again from the same magnitude. This does not result in buildup of energy, so you hit it, it rings, and then you hit it again and it rings. Unfortunately, there's no way to time the clapper or the boost of electric energy in either the coil or the bell in such a way that you have constructive interference. So your clapper, as we can see in this case, has a pretty long contact with the bell. It is not very solid, so the actual time of contact between the bell and the clapper happens is longer than one wavelength of the oscillation of the bell. This is a problem. There is no way, or probably technically there is no way available to strike the clapper against the bell so the bell gets louder, so existing resonance doesn't extinguish. And probably it's not that necessary in bells, but with Tesla transformers it may be very well done using electronics and precise timing of when the clapper is released. In our case, the clapper is electric, and the pulse that energizes the primary coil is very sharp. This circuit, presented here as a block diagram, is a modified version of a phased locked loop system used in telecommunications to keep oscillations of a high-frequency oscillator synchronized with a resonator crystal, such as a quartz resonator or any other crystal-based oscillator. When you push a child on a swing, and let it swing for a while on its own until oscillations start to significantly decay, you want to give it a new push in time so the swing doesn't hit your hand, but instead harmonically pushes into your hand as you give it a new swing. Here we want the energy to build up in the secondary coil of the Tesla transformer, so we give it a jolt. We time our next jolt so it does not create destructive interference but creates constructive interference, so it adds to the existing energy. This way we might not get an expected decay. We might instead have a buildup of energy in the Tesla transformer, giving us a whole set of interesting effects that can be used in measuring things, and of course if we want to look in the free energy aspect of Tesla's research, we might get some interesting results in there. So by timing how quickly the oscillations dampen and how self-frequency of the Tesla's secondary changes, we may get some interesting geological surveillance results and mineswipers and other interesting pieces of equipment that utilize this principle. We may also get some insight on processes that were briefly shown in the video with the plasma balls that I've shown. Plasma balls and the circuits that drive them are similar to Tesla transformers, but they're not timed, so processes in the plasma ball do cause destructive interference, or they just happen at random without any higher purpose. In this circuit, the process is similar to the automobile engine and the ignition timing. If the timing is offset, you're igniting the mixture at the not very efficient time, so it does not the explosion of the mixture does not contribute to the motion of the automobile and the rotation of the engine. In a way, it fights the engine. Explosion may actually damage the components of the engine if the ignition timing is offset. Here we're dealing with slightly higher frequencies, so everything has to be very carefully planned to make sure that the component cost and the cost of the circuit design is not very high, and that the circuit doesn't create distortions to what it measures from the Tesla transformer when it positions the impulse. The circuit has to compensate for all the analog problems and distortions, as well as distortions and delays that the digital side itself causes. I conducted a thorough research of Nikola Tesla's work through many secondary sources that are available, some official and some speculative, and I reached a very firm conclusion. Tesla's achievement was not just in the transformer that he invented, or that was invented before him, maybe, but the idea that this pulse that runs through the primary winding can indeed be positioned in time to cause constructive interference in the oscillations of the secondary winding. Of Nikola Tesla as the magnifying transformers sound very strange to us because what exactly was magnified in them? If transformers just convert current to voltage and voltage to current in alternating currents. Well, those transformers were especially built to achieve this effect somehow with his level of technology that he had access to using spark gaps and maybe vacuum tubes later, and of course commutators. Somehow the event of the pulse was triggered by the oscillations of the secondary coil. Of course, it makes no sense for us to use his methods of technology because we lost all the fine details of how exactly those spark gap circuits work. But it makes sense for us to use processors in modern electronics to replicate the same effects that Nikola Tesla achieved in his research and his practical devices. Modern scientists with their multi-billion-dollar hadron colliders, Nikola Tesla was not very detached from the market, so he understood what ordinary people could afford, and his devices that he built were not very high in their prime cost. The materials that were available to him are, of course, very accessible to us, and instead of trying to wander off into some strange, barely accessible directions of physics, we should focus on researching the simple technology and simple experiments that Nikola Tesla conducted, because we completely lost his understanding of this world and this particular technological achievement. Of course, this circuit is an experimental platform. It does not guarantee free energy, neither does it guarantee a more efficient metal detector or geological surveillance device, but the idea is to track how and what exactly happens in that Tesla coil that oscillates at maybe megahertz, maybe upper kilohertz spectrum. So we need a fast processor that tracks the changes. This system may also be used to power things like radio frequency ID circuits, where it will tune to the consumer, to the receiving circuit. So instead of having a complex receiving circuit, we have a more complicated transceiver that tunes to the receiver and always oscillates it at the frequency that it wants to oscillate, because Tesla would self-adjust to the source. The Tesla secondary will adjust to the source. And it would be nice to fit this system with an oscilloscope, make it connect to a computer. There may be many approaches as far as the Clapper circuit goes. It can be a spark gap controlled by the processor, or it can be a semiconductor or a vacuum tube. This circuit may use an FPGA or maybe some other processor controlled generator of pulses. The circuit cannot strike the Tesla every time it oscillates as an unmodified phase lock loop system taken from telecommunications will, because this will decrease the efficiency of the circuit and it will not give the Tesla secondary to wander off in frequency as it would naturally. It will defeat the purpose of this setup as a research platform. Although I spent a great amount of time researching this subject and theorizing how this circuit works and should work, I am not capable of building this circuit myself. My knowledge in digital electronics is not that great. I can build simple Arduino-based projects, but this is a little bit beyond what Arduino microcontroller boards can do. This requires some high-frequency circuit design, and I'm incapable of doing this. A number of hobbyists and specialists showed interest to the device if it would have been a finished product, but unfortunately I cannot provide it to them, and no researcher that I met in real life is interested in building this so far. I would like to find someone who would work with me on this device and build it, refine and improve the algorithm so it could be marketed in several fields and areas and used for secrets of the Tesla technology research, such as free energy and other things that we do not quite understand and deny without giving a second thought.